My name is Era, and I'm the host of the Tamil Creator Podcast. I chat with creators from all over the world to share their stories and discuss hot topics in a way that I hope inspires, educates, and entertains you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tamil Creator. I'm your host, Era. Today, I have a super interesting guest on the podcast. His name is Rajan Bala, and he's a builder. When I say builder, in the tech world. So he previously worked at my beloved BlackBerry. I know they get a lot of slack, but I love them, and they're still doing big things, even though it's not in the news. And he was a designer and dev manager there. He went on to co-found a company called Hiku, which is a tool used to help you as an end user scanner say items verbally to kind of add to a shopping list. The company went on to get acquired. It wasn't necessarily the super glamorous kind of acquisition you think of, and I'll let Ranjan kind of talk about whatever he wants to share there. And he's currently continuing kind of his builder, path by being a senior software development manager at Amazon. So Ranjan, without further ado, I'll kind of let him introduce himself, maybe his upbringing, kind of talk about kind of what got him interested in technology and kind of go from there. So Ranjan, take it away.
Okay. Hey, thank you, Ara, for inviting me for this. What got me interested in building? I'm one of those kids when I was growing up back home in Sri Lanka, obviously going through wartime, we are in the necessity to invent or do things differently. Part of the reason is, you can't study after 6 o'clock because there's no light, there's no electricity. So you have to leverage kerosene lamps. And that, naturally forced me to do a few things, experiments, right? Things like, taking a bicycle dynamo, putting it on a rim of a bicycle, and then tape the dynamo on a wood plank and have a little, elastic band around it. And then you pedal it and you get electricity. And then at some point I got a hold of like car batteries to charge, and you use that to, have some electricity for nighttime, and you can, have some radio going on to listen to news mostly. And similarly, at some point I'm like, hey, if you can do that, why not have someone sit on a bicycle and pedal, and then plug it into your main line to light your fluorescent light. So I'm a curious kid growing up, right? I tend to want to be able to open up, investigate, assemble it back in, and then see what I can do with it. Now, fast forward, we fled, came to Canada. The same curiosity was still there. Every opportunity I get to, investigate, disassemble, and assemble, I would do it. Even in high school, I forced myself to enroll into these, electronics classes and also auto mechanics classes, where we disassembled the Honda Civic, assembled it. Similarly, would build these, FM tuners in high school. So that passion kind of led me into engineering. So that's where the engineering career started.
So do you have any siblings?
I do. I'm one of 5 kids in the family. I'm the second one. And obviously, we're all Sri Lankan family, where at the young age, the parents kind of instill in your head, you either become an engineer or a doctor. Mm-hmm. So my family consists of both engineers, a doctor, and the youngest siblings, they've done completely different, where one of them did more on the business side of things and the other did something in economics.
Got it. Wow, okay. I was just curious about that. So, and you kind of talked about kind of your upbringing. Part of it was also your experience at Carleton. You did engineering there. I know, everyone talks about Waterloo. If you're talking about engineering, Waterloo, maybe U of T, but mostly Waterloo's kind of talked about producing kind of the world-class engineers. But I feel like you're not the first person, but I've met or talked to other people from Carleton that have gone on to do some great things. I feel like Carleton is super underrated when it comes to kind of a university from like a engineering pedigree. Would you agree? And if so, like, tell us more about that experience at Carleton.
I mean, I know it's a perception or generalization that I hear from our community around going to Carleton University, but you have to look at the history. That university has been around for such a long time. It's post World War One, post World War Two. That the university building is basically Canadian military camp, right? That's where it started. And looking back, the computer systems engineering has been there since the 80s at that university. And most of the nodal research has been done in partner with Carleton University back in the day, right? Fiber optics, telecom. And then Carleton was one of the, I guess, first university in Canada to have aerospace engineering, and everyone else followed suit, right? So there's definitely like specific engineering programs have good recognition. And then the other thing that I found is they're more hands-on, whereas if it's Waterloo, it's mostly theoretical, and then the students are left to go explore and do things on their own. Whereas in Carleton, like from first year, first semester, most of the classes have hands-on practical, which I liked the most because there's the skill building happening from the get-go. Now, that's not why I went to Carleton. I had this notion of if you can focus and study, it shouldn't matter which university you go to, you should be able to achieve it, right? And obviously, the Professional Engineers of Ontario has a requirement for every university to meet before someone graduates. So I didn't have concerns about my credibility of the degree, but it's more about recognition. Now, my friends, Basker is my classmate from high school, right? They went to Waterloo, but I chose not to go to Waterloo because one, my older brother went there. So, typical Sri Lankan family is, hey, if your older brother's going, why don't you go with them? So the expense is just single expense rather than two different places, right? And the other is what's in it for me type of thing, where Waterloo offered me $1,500 in scholarship, whereas Carleton offered me $25,000 in scholarship. I mean, $1,500 versus $25,000. That's a huge number. For a 17-year-old kid going to university, that's a lot of money. So I went after that.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. So, fast forward, you kind of graduated, you did a couple of years kind of at BlackBerry and I think it was WebOS, I think it was, and then you went back to BlackBerry. Then you kind of came up with, a group of your colleagues or, co-founders, this idea of Hiku. Number one, how did you guys think of this idea? And number two, how did you guys think of the name?
So the idea, it's mostly started with my co-founder's wife. Basically, she's our first customer. My co-founder is a product manager who used to work with me during the WebOS times at Palm. So, every time we meet, we chit chat, we talk about ideas. When Palm got acquired by Hewlett Packard, there was an exodus of people just left the company. And one of them is Rob, who was my co-founder. So when he went, he's on the hunt to start the next thing. And then that's when the idea got incubated because his wife is a stay-at-home wife, and he has 3 kids. When she runs out of stuff in the kitchen, she refuses to pick up the phone and type stuff in, right? She forces to remember things in her head. But then, when Rob and Lori, when they go out for shopping, they end up buying multiple of the same things.
Okay.
So that's where the problem statement started, and then we were trying to solve it using technology. So that's the inception of Hiku. And I mean, initially it was called Kathmandu Technologies, but then it didn't make sense to be a product name, and we had to choose something that's simple. And haiku, it's the Japanese poem haiku, right? In 2 verses, you can carry a deep meaning. It can do a lot of meanings across. So that's where we started with haiku, but instead of 5 letters, we chose 4 because of our association with Palm, 4 letters.
Got it.
So hence the 4-letter Hiku.
Interesting. Okay. And I saw that you guys also, I guess, I don't know if it was during, you guys built it yourself, you self-funded, and then you guys used Kickstarter to kind of further, raise awareness, money for the project. How was that experience on Kickstarter? What made you decide to do Kickstarter versus like maybe raise money?
Yeah, so initially it was friends and family fund. In fact, Bhaskar is one of those guys who pitched in the early days. Even though they were themselves in a startup, he's one of those guys who pitched in for us. Him being our friend, and then there were a bunch of these friends and family who pitched in for the early stage, like before the pre-seed fund that we got from Jerry Yang. At that time, it's a matter of like building these little prototype units. Right? You don't need a lot of investment. It's more about the software, and then plastic is like $5,000, and then rest are just like PCB and assembly and low proto housing expenses. For that, it's all self-funded and friends and family around. We leverage Kickstarter. We thought there would be money coming out of it. We can sell and get funding, but it really didn't work out for us because the cost of the product, the device, was already high for us compared to what we said we will sell it for. So we're losing about $30 a pop. And then when you go on Kickstarter, you also have to share a portion of that with them. So that means we'll be bleeding right off the gate. So we use Kickstarter just to create awareness. And then we let them know that we're going to choose 150 people out of that to be our beta participants. So that's what we did. It's to create the brand awareness, let the people know, hey, this is happening. And then we chose about 150 people to be our beta participants so that they can give us direct feedback as they're using it.
You had your beta testers, but what were you envisioning as kind of your revenue model? Was it like just kind of a one-time fee, ongoing subscription?
So good point. So that a lot of people, when we said Hiku, we're building this device, there's a mobile app, and it's creating shopping lists. In people's mind, it's more about a consumer problem solving approach. But really, just like how Tesla claims to be a tech company than an automotive company, for us, it's more about a data company play, not hardware company. So, Hiku shops for you, Hiku remembers for you is our vision. But behind the scenes, it's a data play, right? For example, if Ara buys milk from, Walmart every Thursday at 6 o'clock, that data play can add a lot of value to vendors, right? So in the beginning, especially in the, North American market, our approach is we go direct to consumers, we sell them, let's create a customer base, and then improve the product. There's a data play in terms of consumption. So, the problem space is that a lot of e-com companies, Google, Amazon, or any of these online retailers, they know what you buy when you buy from them. However, they still don't know what Ara buys offline. So that offline consumption data is something that's missing. So we were that gateway to gather what each customer buys offline. So for example, Ara could be buying toilet paper from Walmart, and Ara could be buying milk from Whole Foods and vegetables from another farmer's market. But each of these people don't know what Ara buys at the end of the day. But we will be that connecting conduit, because you're going to have to say toilet paper, Walmart, toilet paper, milk, and bananas. You're going to have to say that into the device, or you're going to have to barcode scan into the device. So that data, the consumer consumption data, is valuable.
Was this product started around the same time as Instacart or no?
Just around the time of Instacart.
So Instacart kind of focused on people that didn't want to leave their home.
Correct.
You guys focused on people that were physically going out to shop.
No, not just going out to shop. Our problem space is, how do we make sure people know what they need to buy?
Oh, right.
And how do we make sure they're able to remember that right from the kitchen?
Got it.
right? Our roadmap is then, from kitchen to your door. Basically, how do I take that data input from the customer? That's simple. And then how do I allow them to either go into the store to buy them, or how do I send it to a delivery vendor like Instacart, or to a retailer, online retailer directly, so that it gets fulfilled by whoever. Like that was our path.
And I guess while you guys were in this stage of data collection, I guess you didn't want any friction, so you probably didn't charge the end users anything to collect that data. This episode is sponsored by nobody. That's right, nobody. So if you could be kind enough to hit that subscribe button, that would mean a lot to me.
Right. So end user, all they had to do is just pay for the device and use it. Like we just wanted to make sure, we did a market study, right? Market research where people use some of these shopping apps, shopping list apps, where you have to type it in terms of what you need to buy. Now, think about a case where a busy family, you're in the kitchen, not everyone will be carrying their phone in there. And the other, when you run out of things, you're not going to, open up the phone, unlock it, find the app, and then go fiddle around with what you need to type when there's an accuracy problem with autocorrect, etc. Right? And that's a lot of friction to input stuff into the mobile app. And then what we also found is people who use mobile apps tend to be more of a consumer. They only use it for consumption just by scrolling through, tapping it, or crossing things off. So that's where we saw value in using a mobile app. And then to fix the problem or the friction of inputting stuff, we came to realize that a device that replicates how people use a paper and a notepad in their kitchen, right? So the process is you pick up Hiku, you push a button and scan barcode, and then you put it back. That replicates, picking up a pen, scribbling, putting it back. Similarly, you pick up device, talk to it, you put it back. That replicates picking up a pen, scribbling, and putting back. So it's like the convention of how people know in the past to write a shopping list.
Got it.
Right? So that's what we went after.
And I guess, did you have a plan of how long you guys were going to go down, just only selling the device that maybe cost or above cost a little bit, but on an ongoing basis, what was your plan to monetize that data, or either maybe charging clients? Like, what was your roadmap looking like?
Good point. Yeah, so we were trying to avoid charging end customers. So that was clear on the get-go. So customers pay for the device, they use the mobile app, they're happy. On the back end though, obviously the data, we started already establishing partnerships with people like Coca-Cola, Nestle, right? And we spoke to Clorox. So there are different brands who are interested in knowing consumption data. So they want to know, what did Ara scan just before buying a bar of soap? On which day, right? Those are things that they leverage to figure out how to position their marketing material for products. And similarly, they're trying to see how they can influence a purchase decision. Meaning, if Ara scans President's Choice Cola, is there a way I can surface Coca-Cola instead? Right? Would Ara then choose Coca-Cola over the other? And what kind of promotion needs to happen in order to make that conversion? So that's some of these data play where you just have to sell, consumption data and which order. Obviously, these are all anonymized. We don't say who the customer is, but more on which order, what frequency, what basket size each time, right? And then that's one angle. While we were doing that, we were establishing partnerships with retailers. There are some retailers, when you send them a basket, we get affiliates percentage. So let's say if Ara has $100 worth of grocery in his basket, if I enabled Walmart, for example, and if you send your basket to Walmart, we may get about 10% of that cut. So there's revenue coming through that.
And so how did you guys go about building relationships with these either big retailers or these big consumer brands? Because that's not an easy task.
Yes, great point. So this is where something worked in our favor. This is also where, in co-founding a company with multiple people, you'll have to deal with disagreements and frictions. So Rob is of the mindset of let's build a product, create the best experience possible, and let's sell it to the end customers. Whereas I'm like, hey, let's figure out how we can lean on to retailers to sell the product and adopt it for us. I was trying to go down the approach of a BlackBerry model, where you build the devices, you sell it to the carriers in volume, you get your money up front, and then guess what? For the push technology, you have the subscription revenue share model going on, right? So I was trying to push for that, and at that time, European countries have already adopted this concept known as click and collect. So if you know, Loblaws just recently started doing that, right? Loblaws then paired with Instacart to do their deliveries. So this concept is something that's practiced in European countries like 15, 20 years ago. So there's this company called Chrono Drive, which is essentially the wholly owned subsidiary of Auchan, which is like the number 3rd or 4th retailer in France and mostly in Europe now. So Chrono Drive, their business, market entry was through drive-through groceries. So people order on mobile app or on their desktop, and then they pick a location where they would like to pick their groceries. They drive up, you pop the trunk, they will bring in, dump your grocery, you drive away. So that's the business model. And knowing this business model, Auchan acquired them. That's why they became their subsidiary. Now, fast forward 10 years, I'm talking about 2012. 2013, 14. So fast forward 10 years, Chrono Drive was trying to figure out how do they make their consumer shopping behavior frictionless, right? And then they saw our TechCrunch article, and then it was an inbound interest for us to work with Chrono Drive. So that's when, let's leverage them. Let's go B2B. Let's, negotiate a price per device, and we'll ship them direct from manufacturer to them. And we'll give them an SDK. They integrate right into their mobile app, right? And we struck a deal saying, hey, I'm not going to tell you the exact dollar amount. We said, if a customer in a month at least scans or saves once, you got to pay us X number of dollars per month. So, active users. So that's where we signed up. And then Chrono Drive created a new program around the device. Just like, Amazon Prime, they created something known as Easy. And they partnered with Coca-Cola, Nestle, Chrono Drive, and they did a launch in France. So that kind of created that awareness, brand awareness, right? We even had a case where Carrefour, number 1 retailer in France, came and got pissed at us for working with Auchan, right? So those kind of stuff happened. At the end of that year, we had about 18 retailers around the world trying to do pilot with us. So that's, for a startup, working with retailers is really difficult. Part of the reason being, their long cycle before they go to market. Chrono Drive was a startup. They had that startup mentality. It was easier for us to work with them, and it accelerated, right? We got to market really quick, within like 6 months.
And then you're building this up, you're building momentum. You got this inbound lead, which obviously adds fuel to the fire. So like what's happening? Like, are you getting to a point where, I'm sure you're getting to an inflection point where, you've found something, there's a product market fit. You can probably, grow this even bigger. So you have to decide whether you either continue building this, which might sounds like you probably need to raise more money, or you sell. So like, what was your thinking like at this point, as you guys are like, you're catching fire, all these retailers want to work with you. What's happening? What's your mindset like?
So we just need to scale. Obviously, one is we need to raise money to scale, because when you have a hardware product on hand to build, because you're a startup, all the manufacturers want cash in advance. right? You have to dump, let's say, think about it, if it's $100 per device, and if you want to make 10,000 devices, there you go, $1 million just got burnt, right? And we're a small startup. So we were bleeding money in the first go. We only raised about $750,000 from Jerry Yang and Ash Patel. That was our seed fund. So most of that just like dropped into the bucket for hardware manufacturing. So for me, acting as the CTO and COO of the company, my goal is, oh shit, how do I reduce the cost of the device, right? Like, we wanted to get to market fast. So we made choices that were easy to get out there. When I say choices, think about a barcode scanner on the device. It's about $20 a piece, right? The cheapest. If I were to go with Motorola or Zebra, it's about $32 a piece. So we went with $20 a piece, and our bill of material is already $102 a piece, right? So my initial reaction is, okay, how do I cut down cost? So in order to cut down costs, obviously you need to revise the engineering side of things, right? And the other is also cost of labor, right? The first set of devices were built in San Jose. We actually wanted to do that because imagine, like, when I worked at Palm, whenever we do a hardware spin, 30, 40 engineers and managers get flown into China, and we stay there for about a week or so, right? And a flight from San Francisco to China is about $2,000. And then maybe a week of hotel is another $7,000 and food. So I'm going to drop $10,000 in a single trip to China, right? So instead of doing that, we said, okay, let's keep it here in San Jose. So that way we have closer proximity. I can just, drive over, take a look at the problems, and then fix it right there and then. So that's how we started. Now, obviously that added to the cost, and we're trying to figure out what to do next. So when I worked at Palm, obviously I had to fly often to China for manufacturing. I've created some relationship with manufacturers, right? I work with few manufacturers. So then I was able to tap into some of that, right? But even before that, we got selected into a hardware accelerator that was done by Flextronics. So Flextronics is in San Jose and it's closer. So when they gave us $500,000 to be part of their portfolio, they've obviously, when a hardware company or hardware manufacturer gives you money to be part of their portfolio, often they're going to take all of that money back through services, right? So, initially they wanted to build our product in San Jose, and the bill of material with them in San Jose was $114 a piece compared to the $102 with our local proto housing. And then we're like, if you want us to be part of this, because they were just starting off something known as Lab 9, and they didn't have any successful portfolio in there. So they wanted to have a company part of that. So our negotiation chip is, hey, we'd like to work with you, but we can't manufacture in San Jose with this cost. So guess what? Take us to China. So we utilize Flextronics to move us from San Jose to China, which cuts our bill of material cost by 30%. So we went from, a good $102 to $73, $74. So at that point, we're about break even, right? We're selling it for $79 a pop, right? But that's not enough, right? Moving to China, we're not seeing any profits from the device. And with all the other expenses, we're still net negative. That's when, I'm trying to hire people into the team. This is where, curiosity, building, all that experimentation come into play. We're trying to hire people for the company. My initial pitch is, hey, let's find an electronic engineer to the team who can be the chief architect, who comes in, should build a barcode scanner in-house, right? So this is also a pivotal time where we kind of changed the way we interview people. Typical interview process, 1 day of interviews, 5 different people asks you different kind of questions. At the end of the day, they decide whether you get the job or not. We took an unconventional approach here. What we've done is, we'll interview just like any other companies, but when the interview is done, if we are directionally inclined, what we do is we give them a project to work on. So we give them saying, hey, here's an API, here's the dev kit, here's the test API keys and shared secrets, here's the credential. I want you to go build this feature over the next 3 to 4 weeks, right? And when you build it, we'll pay you. And when you come back with the results, we'll figure out whether you want to work with us or we want to work with you. It's more like a try before buy type of approach. What we found is the guy we hired, the first hire, he not only did he come up with the proof of concept for a barcode scanner, but he also implemented the backend code and the embedded driver code and came and said, here, look, barcode works, right? So that was a successful hire for us. He just went above and beyond, delivered on it, and we liked the way he approached us, talked to us, we hired him. Since that worked, for the rest of the recruitment, the same process. Every single hire we hired, the same approach. You interview, give them a project, and based on how they deliver, we bring them on board.
For the hardware, did you guys ever think about, it's more popular now, where you can kind of buy up front and kind of spread over the cost of the hardware. If you're like thinking consumer, like if it's a $80 hardware piece, instead of making them pay up front, be like, hey, you can pay over a year or like pay over 6 months. So it's like, it'd be like $10 a month or $8. Did that ever cross your mind, or like was that something that it's almost like a lease? It's almost like a lease in a way, but yeah.
You mean for the consumers?
Yes, yeah. Did you know that every time you left a 5 out of 5 review for this podcast, a Tamil parent lets their child pursue a career in the creative arts? Okay, that's probably not true, but if there's a chance that it is, do you really want to jinx it? Leave a review. Do it for the young creative in you.
So consumers, we didn't go down that path because what we've done is, to be honest, we picked the battle where we're looking for, we did some market analysis, right? We went some surveys to figure out, if I walk into Best Buy, if I saw a device sitting there, we call it the smart fridge magnet sitting there, right? What is the price you're willing to pay to pick it up? So we did them, analysis where the price points that people said was, 79 to 80 is where people said, I have the problem. This is the device I need. I'm willing to pay $79. Then we had another, we call it the year 2 customers. We did a survey and they said, I don't have this problem, or I have this problem, but it's not painful enough for me to go invest money and buy this. But if you were to sell it for $49, I might buy it. So that's our year 2 customers. And then we found this year 3 customers, which is basically, I walk in, I see this device for $15, $20, I pick it up, even though I don't know what it does, right? So that's the year 3 customers, and they all came out to be $29 and they'll buy it. So that's the price point we identified, and we're trying to work with it. So, and the other side is building mobile apps and the way integration goes. To make it the best user experience, we strictly used iPhone customers first, for one of 2 reasons. One is people who are able to buy an iPhone may be willing to buy a $79 device, right? 2, their hardware is consistent, each version, and that means the software updates are minimal. And then the user experience would be better and consistent across each device.
Got it.
So we picked there.
Interesting. Okay. So now it seems like you guys have done a lot of work. You've reduced your cost of hardware. You're building what seems like serious traction. So it seems like everything's going well. And, it seems like there's going to be this magnificent kind of end result. So tell us what happened there. Like what, as you're kind of getting to the end of the, Haiku story? What happened?
Yeah. So, as much as it's so exciting to build the stuff, the challenge we had is more on getting the device out to the customers, working with retailers. So when you integrate something and go to market, it takes about anywhere from 9 to 16 months. So 9 to 16 months for a startup is a long time, right? So we had to find ways to get that moving faster. So Chrono Drive, Ocean, great. We launched it, successful launch. Now, what do we do in the other market segments? So in the US, we found this company called Peapod. They're predominantly in the Midwest. So Peapod agreed to something similar to what we've done with Chrono Drive. But it's slightly different in the sense that they will not buy it from us in bulk. They would want us to sell it to the customers, take care of the marketing, but the consumers of Peapod can easily order from Peapod and Hiku. So we got some traction, but it's not, hockey stick. It's not a hockey stick effect, right? So that's where we struggled the most. We're trying to partner with retailers. It's taking longer. At some point, we also partnered with Accenture. So Accenture is a mainstream consulting company. They work with some of these retailers, so it was easier for us to go through them. They also brought in few retailers, one from Australia, and we worked with Whole Foods for a bit. And then we worked with Loblaws for a bit. So these are things that are going, but they were not ready to convert it into a launch just yet. Now, at the same time, we're burning cash. We're at that time like 11 people in the team, right? Imagine 11 heads in San Jose, you had to pay them. Even if Rob and I don't pay ourselves, you had to pay the remaining 9 people. So it was burning cash, and we were trying to see how we can get into more retailers. Since the beginning, we have been knocking on Walmart's door. We've been knocking on Walmart's door. It's always been denial. And like, nah, we're not interested. We'll look at it later. It kept on going for a while. And at that time, or just before that, we met with Amazon. So this is where things have changed a bit. We met with Amazon. We showed them the data, the metrics of how Hiku was, lifting the basket size week over week for, Ocean customers. Wouldn't it be cool if you guys partner with us and integrate with Amazon's retail directly from Hiku? It was more of, hey, you guys are a couple of guys in the cube. Why don't you just come work for us? And we were not ready with that. We were like, hey, it's either you buy us out or you partner with us. And it was more of a neither. And it's more like it was clear that they're going to work on it, right? So a few months goes by, Amazon announces something known as Amazon-1. It's essentially the same thing, but it's a stick instead of a little puck. The moment that got announced, Walmart sends an email to us saying, hey, let's work together. So that changed things a bit. We were able to integrate with Walmart, right? As soon as we started integrating, we also get another round of funding. We got about $2.5 million in VC funding. So that enabled us to run a bit longer. Where we could have changed a bit is in the middle of the integration with Walmart, there was a verbal offer to get acquired, which we didn't capitalize on. We were being a bit too greedy, and we said, hey, we have investments term sheet on the table. We're going to take it, and let's look at it after the whole integration done and launched. Hindsight, we should have taken it.
Yeah.
But fast forward a year after, the data was not justifying why Walmart should buy us.
Got it.
Part of the reason is we were not able to market the product, and we were left on our own to market the product and sell. And therefore, the adoption rate was much lower. We sold about maybe 60,000 devices, which was not good enough.
Got it.
Right? So now that alone gave us some hype to keep going. It's just that other retailers haven't gone to market just yet. Like I said, 18 retailers from about 7-8 countries in the pipeline. None of them were progressing, right? It's more like we're doing A/B testing for 6 months. We're going to do another A/B testing for 12 months. So by the time they decided to do things, we've already burnt out our cash, right? And then every investor we go to, knowing that Amazon is doing the same thing, people are like, why would we invest in you when you're going to get killed?
Yeah.
Right. So that's what happened towards the tail end. So we just wanted to keep the product afloat, wanted to keep the services afloat, and we were trying to see how this can be acquired. I don't know if it's bad luck. There were few acquisition potentials that just fell apart. To name a few, we were talking to Target, and Target at that time just bought another startup, and they were like, okay, hold off. And then we were talking to Albertsons, one of the top retailers in the US. They were just going through, I believe, Rite Aid acquisition, and they pushed us out. And then something that I came to know after joining Amazon is that Google was trying to buy us when they worked with us for some offline data analytics. Don't know what happened there. The guy who was supposed to lead the acquisition left the company. So some of these things happen, right? But the positive thing is I've learned a lot. All the teams learned a lot. The product demonstrated value. It's just that we just couldn't scale it up. Right? It wasn't speedy enough to go down that path.
Yeah, there's a guy in Silicon Valley. I don't know why his name is slipping my tongue, but he wrote, you can calculate the success of any startup. There's a number of factors, right? Like product, market size, blah, blah, blah. And then one of them is luck. And then he put luck as a number between 0 and 1,000. His basic premise is everyone can do everything fantastically in a great space that's growing and executing well, all of that. But there is some element, whatever you want to call it, depending on your belief system, but there's some element of something you can't control. We'll call it luck here, where it can either really, like COVID, for example, if you're in anything online, like Zoom and all of that, you were doing good before this or well before this. But COVID just that luck, your company went up 10 times. With you, it was you guys built well, you guys built this product, you guys did all these right things, had the right relationships. But Amazon, whether it was the meeting with you or they had this idea before, it was this kind of bad luck that Amazon was already trending down this path. They built it. And then that kind of, that was just bad luck. And you can't control that. So, yeah. So, I mean, that's a great story. I mean, thank you for kind of sharing that because, typically we only get to kind of hear about, the ones that make it out with $100 million exit, except for every one of those, there's probably 10 companies like a Hiku that were a great business. Everyone did everything well, but one bad thing kind of just led to another. And, they just ended up not having that great exit. So I think, it's just it's really fascinating for me to hear. And I'm sure audience as well.
For me, although we didn't get a lavish acquisition, we sold the assets to a company out of Pittsburgh. They're also into this, intelligently enabling consumers to shop. So they're leveraging our technology, especially the AI parts we built, the barcode engine we built. They're leveraging it. To me, at least I've learned how to build a company. I've learned how to build at scale. I've learned how to hire the right people to build it, right? And I've learned how to work with a co-founder because Rob's wife would come into the office for his birthday and say, Rajan, I don't know how you work with this guy. It's difficult, right? So, I was able to manage through that. But I think when I build another company, I would learn more about what not to do, right? So there's a lot of lessons learned.
I think you like kind of mentioned one of the things there, which is people don't there's all these great skills to learn, but like once you choose a co-founder, if you're not already married, you're going to be married to that person professionally
Yeah,
for a
yeah,
while. And like just like if you're married, like you learn how to navigate things with your partner, you have to do the same thing with your co-founder. And it's a hard thing to do. It's not, especially if you add more and more people. Like you have one
yeah.
co-founder. I can't imagine people that have three, four co-founders, like just kind of the complexity of dealing with that.
People are difficult to work with. And then I remember one of my mentors used to say, co-founding a company is more than being married to somebody.
Yeah. I agree. That's a great insight. So, I guess what is next down the future for you? Because I know you have like a number of things on the go. You're currently at Amazon, but I'm sure based on kind of you having this builder itch and like you built Haiku, and
So
what's next for you outside like professionally?
yeah,
We'll get into like Adavani after as well. So
yeah. So
money can be hard to come by, but here is $100 opportunity for you. Join my free newsletter for free exclusive content and a free chance to win $100 when I hold special draws. Did I mention that it's free?
professionally, obviously, like Amazon is a great place to learn, especially if someone's trying to learn and how to build that is like at scale. Like, when I said I built for scale with Haiku, that's nothing. Building things at Amazon at scale is humongous. It's like, imagine your system is being called a million times a day at that level of scale. And that also means you have to build teams that can operate at that scale, right? Again, it's also hiring the right people, mentoring them and developing them. And then also, I guess, building that culture. How do you make sure that bottoms up culture is there? So those are things that, I've been at a director level at BlackBerry before starting my startup. But some of the stuff that I haven't learned there, I'm learning now at Amazon. Right. So it does gets me, I guess it teaches me the complementary skills that I lacked before, which is great. But to your question around what's next, so I'm going to go back to the Haiku days. There was a few things that I was exploring with Haiku is around, how we have these older generation of people who are in personal care homes. Not everyone are tech savvy. And when they need some sort of a help, or when they need to refill medications, how can that be enabled better? So that's something that I've had a little interest in. The other is around, so when I said that part, right, around senior home care and all that, I know you guys are doing, you do something around that, but most on a different orthogonal. But there's something that can be served in that customer segment. The other is also in hospitals. If you've been to hospitals, when nurses or doctors go around seeing patients, they still use a barcode scanner. I don't know if you noticed that. They print and they print and put the prescription info on a barcode and they scan. Every time they give medication, they scan one. So there are things that can be optimized there. But that's not the punchline. The punchline is when we were doing Haiku, this guy walked into our office out of nowhere. He's an orthopedic surgeon at Stanford Medical, right? At Stanford University Medical. And he comes in, he's like, hey guys, I'm a doctor at Stanford. And whenever I see patients, I have to come back to my desk and I have to type up notes. And often what I do is I carry a little tape recorder. I record when I have the conversation, then I come back and I listen and I type. But when I saw your device, can you put a belt clip on your Haiku and give it to me so that I can go into consulting, I can just hold on and then talk, and it will transcribe and give me the text output, right? So I think there's an opportunity to improve healthcare with voice enablement, right? So I've built voice transcription. I've built to be snappy. The moment you let go of the button, it takes less than 2 seconds to get the transcription out. And I think there's a opportunity to go do in healthcare. As part of that, what I was doing is with that idea, I worked with few university folks back in Sri Lanka through the nonprofit, and I've given them problem statements to go research. So there were 2 researches done, and both of them resulted in patents. We filed patents. It's pending, but the outcome is impressive. So I do want to pursue, maybe in the near future, to go build something in healthcare. So I don't know when, but that's keep on bothering me in back of the mind. It's like, why am I not doing already?
Healthcare is a huge one, especially, if you're looking at the US, just kind of inefficiencies there. And you talked about conversational, just technology. I think I'm seeing more and more conversational commerce discussions happening where, like you talked about, how do you decrease the friction in like buying? Just use the use of conversational technology is going to be huge in commerce. But then I think, like you were saying, the next step, that's like an easier place to kind of attack than, healthcare, which is like old and antiquated,
Yeah.
like, like these doctors and, anybody doesn't really want to change the process. Like me, and when I deal with senior homes, it's not even like a hospital where they're a bit more rigorous. Like the folks in senior homes are very slow to kind of change, even though what's coming is potentially good. It's just change. Nobody likes change. So
Correct.
I definitely think there's something there.
Yeah, it's more about, so my brother's an internist, he's a doctor at a hospital. Then my wife is also a doctor. So, my curiosity in me will keep asking, so what do you guys do? How do you see a patient? What do you do before? What do you do after? How long does it take? What kind of system do you use? Right. So I keep poking at these, and I see there are inefficiencies, like you said, right? Those are things that we can just like cut it down from maybe a half an hour to 3 minutes per patient. So definitely there's an opportunity, just the timing, and need to get something done before going to market. And since it's healthcare, there is a bit of a barrier to entry. On the positive side, the COVID enabled a lot of virtual healthcare. And I think even in that space, what I'm trying to do will address the problem.
Definitely. We talked a lot about work and all the, I think things you've done that are great and things to come that hopefully will be great as well. What do you like to do for fun outside of work?
Oh, I love traveling. Before pandemic, I'm usually on a plane whenever I can. And other than that, I love a good long hike. I go hiking. In Bay Area, every Saturday I'm out in the hills and hiking. In Toronto, I try to do that often. Even if I can't hike, I would just walk. I would do a long, 5-6 mile walk.
Yeah, I love walks with podcasts.
Yeah,
like it's just like
exactly.
It just goes by. Yeah.
So I've been listening to this machine learning podcast. I think it's Neil. Neil is the guy who presents it. That podcast, like I'm almost done. It's like every single walk, I've been just constantly listening to it. I did a 14-mile walk a couple of days ago, and I covered like 3-4 chapters in one shot.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And obviously, outside of doing these 2 things, you also started or co-founded a nonprofit as well, or charity. Maybe talk a little bit about that and why you started it and what you're hoping to do with that as well.
Absolutely. So Aravanai, means embrace, and started that in Canada, but it's something that's an extension of what I've been doing in San Francisco Bay Area. There's an organization called ITEE Foundation. It meant for Information Technology, Entrepreneurship, and Education Foundation. So it was established 15, 17 years ago in the Bay Area. The goal was to go build Silicon Valley of Asia in Jaffna. That was the goal. So essentially, that organization, we were trying to focus on the three pillars: education, entrepreneurship, and employment. And we were trying to contribute back home through any of these different programs. We started with the offline, delivery of educational material on DVDs, so that, we find the best teachers per class in Jaffna area, and they will be the ones who create the content for that classes. And they get deployed across the schools. Students get graded based on that, and we saw about, I think, 11% or 12% uplift in grades for kids. And then we had Dr. Edavira Singham from LA be on the ground and work with us to establish, I guess, partnership with schools and get Ministry of Education approval, got rolled out to most of the schools. So obviously, it's not sustainable to have all of us in Bay Area and try to make changes on the ground. That's when we partnered with YAL IT Hub, right? So YAL IT Hub became our partners on the ground. We helped bootstrap and we helped them mobilize. As part of that initiative is UKI, right? UKI is that 6 months coding accelerator, aims at kids who finished high school and couldn't get into university and are looking for financial independence. How do we get them to be independent? How do we get them to land on a technology related job? So that was the motive behind UKI. And there are a bunch of things that's been done across the board, and predominantly leveraging people in the US, right? So when I moved to Canada, my promise is, hey, let me find the like-minded people. Let's mobilize the Tamil community from Canada to contribute back home. So that's how Aravana is born. And the first person that I spoke to is Sen, right? Sen Sachi, because accelerators, programs back home, and I thought someone from DMC would be beneficial, so got him on board. And then Bhaskar, him and I go back to 96. So when Bhaskar was building his company in Bay Area, we talk about these things on a constant basis. So when he moved to Toronto as well, it makes sense. Okay, we're here, let's do this. So there are good things happening. I'm not going to go into details a lot, but there are things happening. We since we started, we've done 3 years in a row to provide mentorships to YAL Geek Challenge participants. We helped YAL IT Hub to establish a accelerator on the ground, and we are actually providing mentorship for the teams coming through the accelerator. And even we helped establish a VC out of Bay Area to fund those startups.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so I'm not going to go into details about what's coming, but there's more impactful stuff that we're working on. You'll hear about it soon. And I guess we'll get to know what the outcome looks like.
Yeah, definitely. And for those of you listening, I'll definitely put all the links in the show notes when this episode becomes eventually published. You'll see everything there, and by that time, who knows what this organization will be up to. So that's amazing. I guess kind of getting into some other things around like yourself personally. What's an insecurity that you have personally?
Insecurity. Sometimes I feel like I'm becoming complacent. Basically, I used to be the guy who would hands-on code. I would write in assembly, I would write in C, I would write in C++. I was one of those guys who got to know the details of how to build something top down. Even when I worked at BlackBerry, I started from Java apps development and I worked my way down to the firmware layer. Now I'm far from it. Even when I was leading the site for BlackBerry in San Diego, I still owned a piece of software that I would actively develop on. And as the team grew to 30, 40 people, I couldn't do that anymore. I had to delegate, right? And that's when I got into Hiku, because I was able to build stuff myself. so I get this feeling often where I go from an engineer to a manager level where I'm far from the code. I get this sense of, oh, am I dumb now? Did I forget everything? Can I now go build something? So I get that insecurity where I may be complacent at this point. So that's something that I constantly look at for opportunity and see if I can go test if I can do this.
Got it. So what's like a new belief or behavior habit that you've recently kind of taken on that's improved your life?
New behavior, consistency. I'm trying to do certain things at a certain cadence. For example, if I have to walk, I would make sure that I walk, let's say 5 miles each day minimum, right? So that way I'm consistently doing it, because in the past I'm kind of sporadic, especially with the whole COVID, that made it even difficult. So I'm trying to get into that consistency habit.
That's a good one. I'm a big fan of that. In terms of your personal legacy, like how would you want your friends and family to remember you?
Someone made an impact in thousands of people's life. Like I always believed in building a company should not be for making money, but rather enabling financial independence to a larger crowd of people. So my dad's grandfather or great grandfather was probably an entrepreneur in our measures. There was a company called Dollar Aluminium Corporation in Sri Lanka, like ages before, and he established that company and provided employment to a lot of people. And I'm kind of trying to see if I can create the same thing, and how do we make people financially independent?
When you say financially independent, what do you mean by that?
Like, can they live a comfortable life and don't have to be, incurring debts?
And how about yourself, like in terms of investing, just I guess financial literacy, like what's your relationship with money? Like how do you view money? And like how do you kind of invest at a general level? Whatever you want to
share. I don't, so materially, I don't look at money a lot, right? I look at if I need to solve a problem, let's get it done. But I do, recently I do investments. I've been doing some angel investments, especially around, startups done by Tamil people, just to make sure that I'm giving back to the community. And then again, going through a startup venture, I know the pain of raising money. So if I see someone is solving a problem, and they need help, I tend to pitch in. And then the other is, I have this philosophy, even when I went to Carleton at the first place, I need to be able to generate passive income through investments. So I got into real estate as early as I was 17.
That's great, yeah.
So I do, buy real estate and kind of let them generate rental income. So I do it in a separate umbrella corporation. But essentially, how do I diversify my investment so that, long term there's passive income coming through, such that I don't have to rely on a full-time job.
I love it. I'm just asking because I'm super passionate about what they call the FIRE movement, financially independent, retire early. And the way I look at retirement is not doing nothing, but exactly what you described, which is money shouldn't be the reason you choose something, but rather it's a product of you doing something. So whether or not you got paid $1 from doing that act of building code or whatever it is you're doing, you'll do it regardless. But if you get paid, great. But that's kind of, that's a similar mindset that I have as well. So I love that you said that. Who is one person from the global Tamil community that you admire and why? And who's someone that isn't, like a non-Tamil person that you admire and why?
There's one Tamil person that I admire and why. I'm probably a bit biased.
It could be anybody. Yeah.
I know. I'm probably a bit biased, but I'm going to say it anyways. I admire Bhaskar a lot, and I've known him since '96. He's one of those people who's very humble. Like, you know how they say it really depends on how you behave when you got a lot of money and how you behave when you didn't have anything. He's one of those guys who's consistently been the humble person that I've known. So I admire him. And, you know, PagerDuty, the idea came from him, but he never took a C-level executive role. He still remained as an engineer throughout. So he's like a solid builder. And that's why I admire him a lot. And sorry, what was the other question?
Oh, a non-Tamil person that you admire and why?
Non-Tamil person I admire and why?
Yeah.
I'm going to say my previous boss, Isabel Mahe. She is a Canadian. I think she's from Simon Fraser and worked at Nodal Networks. And she was my boss at Palm. She is super ambitious, right? And she's now the chairwoman for Apple China. Super ambitious. Like she knows how to lead teams, as in she will get somebody to do something without that person knowing that she just made her do it. So, you know, very, very people oriented and like super sharp in technology. And I loved working with her. So that's one of those persons that I resonate with. There are a lot of people, but you know, her name kind of stood up.
All right. Well, that's kind of a good segue into kind of the final segment of the podcast. It's something that I call Creator Confessions. This is basically kind of like a speed round. I'm going to say some statements. You're going to give me kind of the first answer that pops into your mind. Ready, Ranjan?
All right.
Favorite Tamil food?
Kothurati.
Something that scares you?
Skydiving.
Favorite show you're watching?
Grey's Anatomy.
A place you're itching to travel to after the pandemic is over?
I want to go to the first camp of Himalayas, like Nepal.
Okay. A fellow Tamil creator you want to give a shout out to?
I want to give a shout out to Team Maja. You know, Noel, Sensa, Chi are doing a great job. I mean, this is like a completely outside of the technology world, something unique and different, and they're hustling.
Yep.
And I saw how they released one of the song albums, short time, you know, and they reached like millions of hits. So you know, it's a risk that they took outside of their technology comfort zone.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of what they're doing, as well as just as a side tangent, because what somebody described it to me, where it's like when people that are not, for example, Spanish speaking, they sing a Spanish song. Like I could be singing a Spanish song because it's like it sounds cool, exciting. That's what they're trying to do with Tamil music, where it's like
Exactly.
It's not just Tamil people appreciating, but non-Tamil people are singing along and enjoying Tamil music. So I hope they kind of keep building that way. Favorite childhood memory?
There's a lot. You know, people. I don't know if you know, like there's a leaf from the betel nut tree back home. People used to. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep.
Yeah. So the betel nut trees are common in Jaffna, and you know, people used to pull people as like a little, you know, mat around, and as kids you would sit down as if you're getting a car ride somewhere, even though you just went like 100 feet. It feels like you went like a few kilometers. And then I'm a breech baby, so I was born with my legs first. So we have this belief that, you know, when they have some sort of a strain or a muscle pain, if I rub on them, they will get healed. So there are people who would come home, use one of those leaves to take me to their home, because it's more like, you know, like the apothecary back then. So I would see people just come in every time when they have a sprained ankle.
That's so awesome. A pet peeve of yours?
Pet peeve. I don't know. There's a lot of pet peeves.
Pick one that bothers you the most.
Pet peeve that bothers the most is, you know, being able to go to Sri Lanka without having to deal with this Tamil versus Sinhalese phobia.
Got it. If you knew that you were going to die tomorrow, a regret that you would have.
That I didn't get to build a company yet.
Well, you did, but okay.
Yeah, something that's successful.
Yeah. Well, it was successful, but I know what you mean. Celebrity whose life you want to experience for one day.
Actor Surya.
And finally, a public service announcement that you want to leave our audience with. So it just can be like a general message around to your fellow creators out there. Just, it could be engineers or just any Tamil creator out there. What's a message you want to leave them with?
If you're doing something, do it wholeheartedly. That's what's going to give you gratification at the end of what you made. If you don't do it wholeheartedly, you may not like the outcome.
Great. That's a great way to kind of end off this podcast. Ranjit, you're awesome to kind of connect with and hear your story. Like I said, really loved kind of, how honest you were with kind of your journey. And I think the audience will definitely appreciate it as well. If someone's listening to this and they're, they're inspired by kind of you, your story, and kind of some of the things you're working on beyond just technology as well, what's the best way for someone to reach out to you?
I'm pretty responsive on LinkedIn, so they can find me on LinkedIn, Rajan Bala, or if they rather send me an email, rajan.bala@gmail.com. they can just search and find me. I'm pretty responsive through LinkedIn and email.
Perfect. And I just realized I've been calling you Rajan, and it should have been, and I've been mispronouncing your name this whole time. You should have corrected me. It's like when people say Era or Ara, I don't correct them either, but I'm glad I got to hear that. So thank you again for kind of jumping on the podcast. I appreciate it. And I'm sure the audience will appreciate kind of hearing your story. And, for those of you listening, I appreciate you all, as always, for listening to the episodes or any of the episodes so far. So with that, we'll look forward to the next episode.
Awesome. Thank you for hosting me, Ara.